I'm bringing together peanut butter and chocolate, and I'm making this cup, and people are going to buy it for a price higher than the resources cost me to make it, and that's profit. But there's an added element which is about improving their employees and making them more productive. Thanks, everybody. I think that's appropriate that I am here giving this talk. I'm going to need a lot more of your help in this talk because I was charged with something here by Bill, and I'm still working my way through it. So this is going to be an opportunity for you to help me get clear on my thoughts on whether classical liberalism has anything to say about making the workplace more productive. Because when I started this, I thought, oh yeah, it's obvious. And as I work through it, I still think it's maybe true in some cases, but less obvious exactly why, or whether it's even classical liberalism and just not good old economics. So I know I got on a roll in my first talk, but please feel free to chime in. Especially, I want you to think about all of those tenets of classical liberalism that Ryan talked about, and what they might have to say for some of the unique features, management features of some of the companies I'm going to talk about. Right? So if you think about the presumption of freedom, or the primacy of the individual, or toleration. If you see one and you think, hey, I think that is an example of toleration work. I mean, sometimes it's going to be very obvious. But what's interesting to me is a lot of those, classical liberalism is primarily a political theory, right? It's a view of us vis-a-vis kind of government, the state, right? If we think about one of those tenets of classical liberalism was limited government, right? Now, certainly business people can have an appreciation for limited government and want to contribute to that, but I'm not sure how that works in a management workplace. We can think more of tolerance being something that works in the workplace, but how exactly that contributes to a firm's, what in economics we call production function. How exactly does tolerance make a firm more productive? I think to me is an open question. I want to begin though by talking about institutions. So this gentleman here is Doug North, 1991 Nobel Prize winner in economics for his work on institutions, and these are the humanly designed rules of the game. Okay, institutions exist in society. They exist in households. They exist in firms. We all understand this, right? Pete and I were having a conversation about baseball last night, and we were talking about some of the new rules of the game for baseball designed to create a better product, right? And from society's standpoint, institutions are important because they reduce uncertainty. They shrink the choice set, right? And if you think about conflict in sports, as an example, it tends to be when people spend more time arguing over the rules than they do about kind of playing the game. Yes?
On the line, non-formalized or unclear rules are problematic. How do you balance that with when you get very specific rules, then all of a sudden you're constraining creativity and evolution and change?
I mean, obviously, like anything, there's trade-offs. So I think there are rules that provide a lot of freedom right, for individual action, but are not prescriptive. But I'll foreshadow later on in my talk, Koch Industries has recently changed their management philosophy from what was called market-based management to principle-based management, primarily because they thought people were interpreting things too much as rules. Another individual that we're going to talk about, Chris Rupert from Morningstar, has this great 5-minute video about his company on budgetary authority. They have no rules about anybody can spend anything. There's no formal written rules, but as he says, everybody knows the rules. And so you are correct that there's always a trade-off there, and calibrating that right degree of specificity where the rules aren't too confining but still allow for innovation. And I think I would think about this. So one of my areas of research is what's called a constitutional political economy. And basically, the argument is we're designing those rules, right? And so you have to have some mechanism, ideally, for going back and changing the rules if they are too confining. The great example I love to teach is the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation, I love bad, I think a bad rap. They were very constraining by design, but they had a lot of benefits. And so, obviously problems were identified very early on with the rules of Articles of Confederation. One of the interesting things is there was no way to modify the Articles of Confederation, which were the predates the current U.S. Constitution. The only way to modify was complete unanimity of all states. And so it's hard to find any rule change that everybody's going to agree on. So anyway, I think the key thing is Doug North kind of was one of the founders of what's called the New Institutional Economics. And the New Institutional Economics is like, look, society is complex. People have intent to figure out institutions that solve a variety of problems. We might think those institutions themselves are problematic, but it might be the best we can do. I kind of wear two ideas. I try to keep two ideas in my head at the same time. One is the idea that everything that exists currently is the best we can do. That's my Gary Becker. I don't know if you're devil or angel on my shoulder. Everything that exists now is the best we can do, because when you think about it that way, you think, why does the current system exist? And that's, like, as a social scientist, that's the first thing you got to understand. Why does this system make sense internally? And the other is Thom Tollison, who was a public choicer. And Bob used to always say, yep, everything's efficient, but we're all part of the equilibrium, which means we, as individuals, can change things if we can see an opportunity to readjust the rules to make make an improvement. So I'm taking this from Mike Munger. If you don't know Mike, you should know Mike. Lots of reasons. He's just a great lecturer, very provocative. Okay, just to be clear, these are his things in these particular categories, but this is what he is the real kind of dilemma for a classical liberal. Is going around the top, we have properties of choice. Right? We have individual decisions, so things like I chose what I wore today, okay? And that has no consequence hopefully on any of you, unless it's envy or hatred of my sport co comment. Then we have choices that are collective, but my choice has no consequence for your welfare. That's when we tend to get the tyranny of the majority, right? Theft of property rights, invasion of privacy. We feel whatever that we is, should have a say on your individual situation and welfare. Then we have we have the property of the good, right? So the good is private, my sport co, or who I marry. But then we have public decisions, public goods, right? So air, water pollution, right? And I decide not to install scrubbers in my smokestack in West Virginia, and so I cause acid rain in Ontario, which is a thing they use patent weighting. And then we have collective decisions that also for public goods. You might think of national defense. Again, Mike says how to take care of the release well-off in society. I like to think of this continuum because we want to stay off those off diagonals, right? As conservative liberals, we don't want to be the tyranny of the majority. We don't want theft of property rights. We also see this as bad, right? Like we're imposing costs on others without their consent. Like stay off the off diagonals. Now we can debate, right? Just then we think about 2x2 matrix. We can debate like, is this actually this important? Is this a very small square? But let's stay off the off diagonals. But it's hard. How do we design institutions when we have a heterogeneous population in many different ways, right? Like there are people out there who think it's perfectly fine to abrogate property rights. And they don't see it as a tyranny of the majority. They think, right, like, no, you should not be able to make your home more energy efficient because you're in a historic district. We also have the knowledge problem, okay? Even if we can get agreement, do we even have the information necessary to come to it? So with the agreement that this is the thing that we do we have the information necessary to arrive at a solution of what should be done, right? So yes, we should defend ourselves against foreign invaders, whatever that means. How? Okay, we decide how. How do we finance it? And then we have the problem of scarcity. Okay, we agree what we want. But like Charles Ford says, my brother and I are in accord. We both want Milan. We have a problem of scarcity in society. So yes, we can all agree that we want to spend ourselves collectively into the poorhouse. So those are like big institutional questions at a political kind of theory level. But, so there might not be a right answer. And part of the problem is these collective choices are a singular choice. Okay, now those you might have public finance might say like, okay, what about Lindell taxation? We can just charge people, everybody can get agreement. We can get unanimity. But it's still, what about the person, that outlier who's a non-interventionist? And I don't care. There's no amount of money you can compensate me to make me agree that this is a good policy. Okay, so there's this problem like, what is there? Is there a... And so Hayek, right? My point is, I know, I have a lot of big text, I do big block of text, but there's a lot of big block of text in here, because I want to make sure I get other people's ideas right. Right, as Hayek points out in his famous AER article, this is not a dispute about whether planning is to be done or not. It is a dispute as to whether planning is to be done centrally by one authority, where the whole economic system is to be divided among many individuals. Planning in this specific sense, in which the term is used in contemporary controversy, necessarily means central planning, direction of the whole economic system according to one unified plan. Competition, on the other hand, means the centralized planning by many central. However, and my apologies for the underpants mean, but it seems like it's planning all the way down. Okay, so governments can't rationally calculate because they don't have property prices and profit. Yet we have firms that explicitly exist to ignore the price mechanism. And property, to a limited extent, right? It's not that profit and loss doesn't and prices don't operate. Firms respond to external, something happens to raw material costs and they respond. But it's not like everything's operating on a spot market, like when you pull up in front of Lowe's and get somebody to help you tear down the deck and rebuild it. Right? So there's reasons to not use the price mechanism. So if planning is bad in government, why is it good in firms? So Ronald Koch asked this question in his 1937 paper, The Nature of Good. And we have this marvel that I'll talk about tomorrow in my talk of the price system. This emergent, spontaneous force that conveys all this great information. And you have firms saying, no, you know what? I'm going to buy this I'm going to make this resource. I'm not going to buy it. Right? Why do they not do that? We hired people to long-term contracts and made best guesses about how effective they are contributing to the bottom line. As Mike Munger says in the great Econ Lib essay, why don't bosses just wear bunny slippers and sit at home and just go out and purchase everything every day? The answer, as in many things, is transactions costs. Spot markets work really well, again, if I'm trying to find somebody to help me tear down my deck. But there's all these other costs out there for getting resources when you need them, right? We have search costs. Like, how do I find the best price for this raw material I have? Well, but I need to bring them all together at this particular time. Who has things readily in stock? Okay? How can I make sure that it shows up at the time I need it? Because I have all these other things waiting to combine them together in this product I make. Maybe I have a trade secret, or I have a patent I don't want to get out. I'm KFC with the 11 herbs and spices that I don't want anybody to know about. Can't contract that out, the secret will be gone. Or WD-40, and nobody knows that formula. So for Koch, the firm owner is an entrepreneur who figures out that by bringing these contracts together, these long-term contracts together, inside the firm. They can produce a good or service at a lower cost compared to being a boss at home in their bunny slippers and just coordinating resources using the price mechanism. Now, this suggests, though, that if bringing it in is, well, what's the scale, what's the size, the optimal size of the firm? Well, it depends, right? Because there's a cost, there's bureaucracy costs, there's management costs, there's costs that much like Jim Buchanan used to always say, like, I don't know if this is true, so if you're an insect biologist, let me know, but basically, like, a bumblebee body weight, if you just increased its scale, it couldn't fly because its weight would overwhelm its ability of wings to allow it to move. And he used to always ask, how is government like a bumblebee? Well, how are firms like a bumblebee, right? Like, how do you coordinate, not using the price mechanism, the activity of all these folks inside the firm as you get larger and larger? At what point do you become more like Liechtenstein or some small principality and less like, the original reason the firm was created? So anyway, the key thing, the reason I'm going through all of this is the management within the firm is actually very important, because proper management clearly helps define the limits of firm size and thus the efficiency of firms. Okay, because you're managing these internal resources. When I teach principles of economics, I say, like, look, I think there's two ways. Well, we'll put it a different way. Why is econ in both arts and sciences and the business school? One is it's a social science. We want to understand how the world works. That's the arts and science part. But the business part is we have all these very basic, simple insights that are consistently applied in the business world that are really important. Opportunity cost. If you're bringing a resource into the firm, what's the opportunity? You have to constantly be evaluating that resource. We have our old president's mansion. I put a slide up up on the screen, first day of class, and it's our old president mansion. It's half empty, right in the middle of campus. What is the opportunity cost of that space? We look at it from well, here's the maintenance cost. Here's all, but like, of having that and not all the variety of alternative uses you could use for that space, those are decisions that have to be made internal to the firm. I don't want to say it's pure guesswork. You have rules of thumb and things like that, but it's indirectly related to profits and loss. So all of these make or buy. So there's a whole field of contracting. Right, there are different incentive mechanisms. Market competition can provide cost insight. We can do benchmarking, help motivate service providers. Right, but it may not be a panacea. There could be hold-up costs. It's hard to monitor quality. Give you an example. My university outsourced our food service to a third-party vendor. And suddenly we have all these chicken breasts that are raw in the cafeteria. Is that just, happenstance? Is it hard to, and then it was difficult to fix. Why? They were no longer university employees. We couldn't direct them to, at the quality level that we wanted to. it was this external provider. Now, the external provider wants to keep the business, so maybe that's, but it's a little less direct. Okay. So I go through all that, because that is usually where that story ends. Oh, here's some economics by some classical liberals. Here's Koch, Oliver Williamson, Doug North. Let's move things into the marketplace and away from government. And here's some technical things about why firms exist. But I would submit that the office is funny because everybody who's worked in a number of firms has experiences that it resonates with them. And for those who are anti-capitalist, anti-business, that's their takeaway. Is not that it's a miracle that despite many people bumbling their way through being a manager or being an owner of a firm, that we still have all this great prosperity we have. It's that, hey, might as well lean heavily on government because this is the alternative. So he left the room. But this is when Bill called me and asked me this. Can firms be better run through classical liberal principles? I said, if I can think of some examples. And that just sent me like down a lot of late nights thinking about exactly why. Did I at first think, yeah, this is obvious, and now I'm not so sure. So I'm going to talk about three companies. Here, and again, please interrupt me when we're going along and say, like, okay, hey, that's not a classical liberal principle, or this is something that I think is part of the classical liberal tradition, but that is not something that we talked about in Ryan's talk. Okay, so I'm going to start with Koch Industries. If you don't know Koch Industries, they often rank at the top of Forbes' largest private companies. Sorry, typo there. In 2022, annual revenue is $120 billion. So there's, I still think it's interesting to read Charles' original statement of his management philosophy, his book Science and Success. They have recently moved away from some of what was laid out in what they called function-based management. But bless you, those of you who have read a lot of Mises and Hayek will see a lot of themes resonate if you read this book. But anyway, they transitioned to principle-based management, what they call principle-based management, precisely for the reason brought up earlier is as they stay under market-based management, it was a little too rule-bound. Another way to think about it is anytime you have a system, it tends to get ossified and people find ways to undermine the original intent of the system. And so they moved to something they call principle-based management. There's a ton of overlap between the two. Okay, there's a lot of again, I want to make sure I get their words right. So there's a lot of quotations here on the screen. The basic premise is firms just like society, albeit a unique one, and literally call it the starts with these ideas and principles that Charles thought that lead society to become prosperous. So in the Science of Success, talk about economic freedom. Unfortunately, cite the Heritage Index of Economic Freedom, but I'll forgive that. But as he says in Principle of Age Management, it's a framework based on the principle of human progress that enables individuals and organizations to succeed long-term by creating superior value for others. But today's world requires even greater urgency and commitment to these principles, which throughout history have enabled individuals, organizations, and science progress. Okay? So we have things like, you would think about these are the benefits of classical liberalism. They promote peace, civility, opportunity, progress, family, and business success. Yes?
This sounds to me like the civil society tenant that we discussed earlier, and that
Okay.
he's just kind of using that, trying to create it here. And I suspect the 5 dimensions, I read his book, Good Prophet,
Yeah.
and I suspect the 5 dimensions are going to tackle some of the more core,
Yes.
fundamental elements of that.
They are, but which specifically of the civil society? I was curious, like, what about civil society is?
The idea of a group of individuals who are all working together towards something, but the responsibility that each of them individually holds to moving things forwards.
Okay, so like a common, like, purpose
Mm-hmm.
and responsibility.
Mm-hmm. With the goal of promoting, quote, peace, stability, opportunity, progress, fulfillment, and ... success.
Yeah. It is, I like that from the standpoint of, I got a greater appreciation going through these for vision and mission statements.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate, like, when you become a dean, maybe I'm telling too much, everybody's like, what's your vision? I'm like, that's pretty arrogant. But like, how do I know, like, how am I gonna have a vision when I come in? Like, I'm part of a larger organization. My university has it. We exist to serve, first and foremost, serve the citizens of the state of West Virginia through our outreach activities like extension, but through our educational activities. We are the state land grant and flagship. That is our mission. And it would be like the very opposite of humility to think that I could bring something new and different, or I should bring something new and different, except to say we do that through a business school. But, like, I'm inspired reading some of these and seeing the things in action. So you can see when you have that, as somebody who, like, I wish this on, like, I say this not as a self-aggrandizing point, but I hope this happens to all of you. When you find the thing that you are good at, and maybe you've already found it, people will see that. And other things will come because there is a relentless search for talent out there. And it'd be very easy to get pulled into something that doesn't align with your purpose. Right. That. Where's Bill?
Is this cable unplugged? Maybe you pulled something?
I don't think good. There it goes. I just had to wake back up. There it goes. You can get out over your skis and end up in a very bad situation because, hey, no, you should go on to the next thing. Like, I often say, oh, do you ever want to be a college president or a provost? And I'll tell you, like, you spend any time, like, the provost is the worst job in the world. And I know I would not be successful in that. Being in a business school is the best thing for me. So anyway, I think there is a big element to purpose or vision, and I think that's a foreshadowing of what our workshop this afternoon. So those 5 dimensions, again, you're right, they often overlap a lot with good profit, is empower employees who apply principles of human progress. So one of the things that is running around in my mind is, like, how do I conceptualize this as an economist? Because if we think about, I'm at a very basic level, the firm providing, okay, I'm Reese's, I'm making peanut butter cups, right? I'm bringing together peanut butter and chocolate, and I'm making this cup, and people are going to buy it for a price higher than the resources cost me to make it, and that's profit. But there's an added element there seems to be in all 3 firms, which is about improving their employees and making them more productive. And that, to what extent is that really, if these are outlier companies, is their success? Is it, I got this long-term contract, right? In some sense, for my employees, and the value of my company is the embodied value of the people that I have helped create value in themselves. Okay, so Koch's success is dependent upon empowered employees who apply principles of human progress. Each of us can contribute our abilities and knowledge to promote a culture that enables Koch to build the capabilities, okay, that create product and services benefit. We have a purpose here. It's to use our talents to serve others through the marketplace. Right? And the great thing about firms, we can select into those firms whose mission appeals to us. And I'm willing to invest in my own human capital, not only because I get paid, but I believe in the mission. I feel it has given me purpose. And I'll tell you as a dean, that's one of the things that I find amazing is very few 18-year-olds come in knowing what they want to do. And to see people like, and even they graduate not knowing what they want to do. Like, I got a marketing degree or whatever. And to see them 3 or 4 years out, and once they're in an organization, like, they've drank the Kool-Aid. A lot of them believe in that mission, whether it's I'm doing professional sales from Fastenal or whatever. They believe in that mission, and that gives them purpose. And I'm not going to go through all the dimensions. There's a lot of dimensions. You can find it on their website. But these are the ones I think are maybe most salient to kind of classical ideas. Bottom up versus top down. Okay. You can kind of think of this maybe as a limited government application, like we're not going to have a lot of bureaucracy. Okay. But it also is the privacy of the individual. We understand that folks are just not like pieces we move around on the chessboard. They have things that are only in their minds, that tacit kind of knowledge that we need to give them the freedom to bring to bear on our shared purpose. Okay. So, general principles rather than detailed rules. I think societal-wise, that's the difference between common law and civil law, sometimes argued. But this obligation for individuals to use their gifts and knowledge, I'm calling it obligation, they don't, to tackle problems and pursue opportunities. And there's thing that's not really, it's really economics. The self-actualization point, right? Like, is this a selection? Do they select in people? Or do they create people who want to self-actualize? Okay. Individuals who want to take on, acquire new skills and ability, who want to become a better version of yourself. And that's a running theme through all of this. These three companies is don't let where you are now define you. And I'll tell you that resonated a lot with me. Like I want to go work for an organization that doesn't let now define you. And what do you mean by that? Like you can benchmark, hey, we're the best in the world. But what does that mean you're going to stay on top? No. Again, there's a great Chris Riefer, we'll talk about it in a little bit, on YouTube under the Self-Management Institute, where he says, look, because he was talking about how do you motivate employees, how do you give raises, and he says, look, our goal every day is like, you wouldn't ask Jack Nicklaus, the golfer, how he's motivated. Like his goal is excellence. He wants to shoot an 18 every time he goes on the golf course. Does he think that's realistic? That he could hit 18 straight hole? No. But that's what drives him. That's he's aiming for that pursuit of excellence. And if you kind of see one of the themes through here is motivating employees to not just satisfy us, but really to maximize their potential as human beings. And that's what they mean by closing gaps in the Koch terminology. The difference between where you are and your idea of perfection, knowing that you will achieve that, as they say, being satisfied with the best in the world is a recipe for being left behind. Now, I will say this is exhausting. This is the type of thing my children would say, Dad, you're giving me anxiety. Like, I'm there, right? Like, have any of you done strength training? Ever heard of strength training? It's like a Gallup product. Fascinating. I don't know the science. I'm not sure, like, compared to other stuff, but I learned a lot about myself going through strength training. And my number one strength, so I mean, you don't need about strength training. Strength is like, here's your 34 strengths. What comes easy to you? What can you manifest? But it exhausts you. I am extremely low on empathy. Anything interpersonal is like bad for me. Like this one called Woo. Woo is like meeting with people, like I'm jazzed. I want to like, yes.
Winning others over.
Yes, but it is winning others over, but you like feed off.
You enjoy it, but that's what WOO stands for.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Winning others over. Thank you. My president, Gordon Gee, Woo is a number 1 or 2 for him. And if you know anything about him, he's like out on our main bar street at like 11:30 at night talking to students outside bars at 81 years old. He's a Mormon, doesn't drink, but like he needs to be around people. That's not me. 6 o'clock hits, I'm home with Jim Beam. But I'm a maximizer. My brain is always thinking like that about but it's it's not exhausting. I feed off of that, but it can be tough to be a manager if you're always thinking about different ways to like make things better. Like it can be very difficult on your employees. Okay, that's a theme that gets through all 3 of the firms I'm going to talk about. Is this idea of like a higher standard and constantly pushing for that higher standard. Contribution motivators. Adam's, always tough when I go into trying to quote Adam Smith, so I won't. I'm just trying to I think one of my key takeaways from the theory of oral sentiments was that we want approbation from our fellow man. Right? We want to be seen as having esteem. gleam in their eyes. And I don't know what this typo is. Contribution. I probably should get a hyphen there. Being contribution motivated enables people to discover, develop, and utilize their abilities to succeed in helping others. I think we all get that, like whether it's in the eyes of our parents or someone we respect. We want to take on board because we're contribution motivated. Crave destruction. What's the classical? I mean, Schumpeter often think this is classical liberal. Is that a classical liberal idea? Is it instead like, I've always struggled with that. Like, I'm not sure Schumpeter was a classical liberal. Is it instead of being open to change, openness is the classical liberal version there? What are they thoughts? No? Yeah, I know it's a tough one, yeah.
I think for this one, I would think of something like toleration, because even if you can't see it, you want to tolerate people who can see things. And so it might look like destruction to you when there's creation behind it for someone else. But it's hard to say.
No, I mean, there is an element of like spontaneous order in creative destruction, like a faith. Yes?
Yeah. And I think those completely just the words, but what would not be classically liberal is, my company's profitable, so I'm going to advocate for regulations so I can keep that profit, while here what you want to do is be open to new businesses or your business, I guess, innovating. So I guess.
So it's kind of like, it's like it's a negative of like, well, there's things this is a statement about who we're not.
Yeah.
Would that be another way to?
I guess it's putting free markets in or competition.
Yeah, yes.
It's also, part of it is also respecting the life project of others, right? So it's respecting their ability to make their own lives prosperous and not preventing that.
I like it. I like that. And that's, so respecting the life project of others. And, the one key difference in the planning done by governments and firms is that freedom of association. Now, there is some element that we can vote with our feet, right? You economists in the room, we're at Cebu, and we can choose among different governments, but there's a cost of that. And the freedom of association is really about finding organization. That not only I feel comfortable with people that respect me, but I want to mutually be respected. So this is where I kind of went not off the rails, but really started. I was totally sold. Yes, I like love, but so much of this just seems to be good economics. And it's called economic measures, but good economics, not necessarily classical liberalism. But if you really had to push, and I always tell my students, like, the reason so many economists go to law school, at least in the US, is it allows you to put like your lawyer hat on. Like, okay, I'm gonna argue this point. What's the best argument for this point? Well, this particular model is the best argument for this point. And we know we're in a non-price situation. And we know that what happens in non-price situations, well, we might misallocate resources. What can we also do? We can impose costs on others. We create externalities on others in the firm. And so a lot of this is a way of, like, think about culture. what really is, if we to put that in economic terms, what does culture do if it's good? When you think of like a good culture, yes,
It brings people together
it brings people together. Why does it bring people together?
because of like this shared like similarities.
Okay, yes, because we're like, there's a familiarity there, yes.
It creates the right incentives.
Okay,
So it creates the right incentives for people to progress and to affect society in a positive manner. So a culture will create like a guideline for what people want. And so if people share the same culture, then they'll encourage others to follow these guidelines and create.
so it's like a mutual reinforcing,
Yes.
yes. Yeah.
Let's say, if you have a culture where you share like the same, I guess, norms, expectations and stuff, there's that level of trust, which increases efficiency, because you don't also have to like ask if it's okay. You know what people want, people are fine with it, so you kind of just imply that what you can and can't do.
Excellent. So this is great. So what does trust, like in the language, what does trust do? It lowers transactions cost, right? So I love both of these points because there's two things I hadn't thought of. One is it gives us a shared mental model. We both like agree that like, okay, this is the world we operate on. We have this shorthand, lowers transactions costs because we trust one another. Yes.
Oh yeah, I was gonna just tie into like what everyone is saying. Is if we all respect each other and we all are on the same page about things, like exactly what we're doing in this room. We all come from all walks of life, and we're all here for a common goal, and we can talk very freely and present different ideas, and it creates a perfect environment for learning ideas, which is exactly, in my opinion, what we're talking about here.
So there's like so that would also mean there's a tolerance and openness that comes with that culture. That allows to contribute. Out with Enoch and then back here.
So fosters cooperation.
It what? Fosters cooperation? Yep. Exactly.
Just to draw up like an umbrella term, and it builds social capital, reciprocity,
Yep.
not control, over time strengthening social and economic status.
Yes, yes. That's social capital. And you'll see elements of that coming up later. Since we started late, Ryan, how long are we going to go?
We'll go ahead and go 5 minutes over, so go to 12:20.
Okay. So, principled entrepreneurship, to get back to the earlier point, is one that, I'm sorry, what was your name? Evan made, is this idea of like, look, well, we're entrepreneurs, but there's bad entrepreneurship, right? There's rent seeking, right? There's actions you can take that do not create value for others, right? And that's the fundamental goal is our goal is to create value for others. Value within the firm, but also value with our partners outside the firm, and then ultimately value for society. So, so that's what supervisors should be doing, is explaining, your manager should be explaining to employees what exactly, no, we don't do that. You're building out your TSP reports, and that's not providing any value to the bottom. Is the TSP, what's office space? What is it, is it TSP report? TPS, damn it, video. Okay, TPS reports that aren't creating value for the bottom line, right? It's not creating value for anybody, but you're checking some box. That's not principled entrepreneurship. You have an obligation to not engage in that thing. Experimental discovery and knowledge sharing. Within the firm, you have an obligation to make everything common knowledge. Lots of reasons why you want, right? First of all, more information is good. Getting tacit knowledge out of your head, where others can use it, is good. But that also builds trust. Eliminating waste and bureaucracy, and then appropriate risk tolerance. Okay, I'm going to go through the other dimensions pretty quick. I'm going to tell mine because they repeat. Some of the same themes go throughout. So virtue and talents, right? Here, just the emphasis is more division of labor, my comparative advantage. But what I found most fascinating here, and we can see some elements of some classical liberal values, humility, here, integrity, responsibility, is the recognition that one of the rules-based traps they fell into as an organization is not thinking of they're thinking of slotting employees into specific situations, as opposed to thinking, these are the unique talents that this person brings, how can we best utilize those talents? Right? And maybe people have been in a situation like that, where you're like, I have so much more to offer in this situation, but I'm in this particular role, and they just see me as that person in this particular role. Dimension 3 is knowledge. Long-term success comes from having superior knowledge, culture based on the principles of human progress. Right? If you think of a firm, maybe this is the key way. So you think of firm as a nexus of contracts, right? They're all the people that are there and work at that firm. The more you build them up and the more you tie their purpose to the firm, that is your way to achieve long-term success. Sorry, I need to make a note, because there's a large literature in the family business area, like looking at some of these 1,000-year-old Japanese family, like maybe that's ultimately is their time left to a purpose, their family purpose, and that's really what causes us. Okay. Again, reinforces principles in other areas. The example here is personal knowledge, right? Why do we focus on bottom up instead of top down? It's because we all have things to bring to the table. We see problems. We need to feel comfortable enough articulating that. The only thing I want to highlight in dimension 4, because comparative, that's just like an economic term, is property rights. Like, obviously, except in employee-owned firms, you don't have true kind of property rights, but lots of employees have different decision rights. And feeling like you have the ability to act without going to your boss every time is empowering. It also provides clarity. What are those lines between, thine and mine? But we should not think of that in terms of title. I mean, this particular part, if you were to go read it, really resonated with me. Because I have lots of battles with what we call talent and culture. Most places would call it HR. Because they're like, well, they're supervising 5 people. You need to pay them X. And I'm like, is that the value they're providing to the organization? Right? Is this anyway? I probably shouldn't do this thing. Being videotaped. Another culture point I think is about accountability. Right? You have to allow people to be accountable with the flip side of that for their decisions, but you want to have greater risk tolerance because all of the organization change if you don't allow your employees to have greater risk tolerance. And here's where they also, again, talk about, this is more the what will we not do. So their statement in motivation dimension is, we succeed things that everyone is motivated, develop, apply their abilities in harmony with our principle-based framework. The key takeaway I took away from here is, and again, these are not just economic, things we won't do, one size fits all compensation schemes, pay based on number of reports, rewarding short-term earnings, and compensation that's not tied to targets, not necessarily about value creation. Okay. So in my 15, and I have us on Morningstar, although in some ways much more fascinating. The Morningstar company, when Morning and Star put together, not that company. This is the Morningstar Tomato Company, founded in 1978, Chris Rufer, specialized in the production and processing of tomatoes to supply tomato paste, diced tomatoes, and other tomato products. Privately held company, just like Koch Industries. It has over $800 million in revenue and supplies 40% of the diced tomato and ingredient tomato paste, right? So this isn't tomato paste that shows up in your store. It's tomato paste that's an input into other products. So their philosophy is mission-focused self-management. The company has no managers. It's just structured completely flat. There's no titles. Business cards just have the mission statement on it. That's my name and email. I'll tell you, here's the mission statement. According to Chris Rufer, mission-focused self-management is simple. Our personal commercial missions, we'll talk about that in a second, drive our colleagues' activities in coordination with an internal and external customer focus. Our relationships are based on human respect. So what does this mean in practice? I'm going to skip this just because it's long. Their vision is Olympic gold medal performance. So this is that closing the gaps from Koch Industries. Okay. We also see, again, a commitment to innovation, to staying ahead. Always, as Rufer says in the video I referenced earlier, always, when you go on the golf course trying to shoot 18, even though you know you're not going to hit 18 hole-in-ones, we can be better than we've ever been before. Their values are integrity. They don't say this, but we've already talked about, lowest transactions cost by frame of trust. Openness, and I thought this was interesting, physically attractive facilities. As the place you want to come to work. And what they mean by total responsibility is you have things that are in your job duty. But if you work there, you have our purpose. Total responsibility is if you see, like, think of the phrase, you see something, you say something. Does say that's not my job. You never should say that's not my job. No, you have total responsibility. You see a way to improve something, or something's going to be harmful to say something. So they call their employees colleagues. And these are the principles. See a lot of the same themes: tolerance, direct communication, and gaining agreement. What do they mean by that? They mean like there are no bosses. So if Bill and I have a problem, Bill and I have to have a conversation, and we have to come to mutual agreement. And if we can't, we have to bring others in who might be again, I don't really use this term, but to say like an impartial spectator here until we come to an agreement. Caring and sharing is related to accountability. We have to take pride in what we do. And if we see something, we have to share it with others. And then finally, doing what's right. So, no bosses. How does coordination happen? They have something called a colleague letter of understanding. It's basically a performance contract among colleagues. You lay out your own commercial vision statement. What do you hope to achieve in your role? Maybe you're a mechanic in the factory. Here's what I want to do. define my responsibilities. I fix this machine, I make sure it operates well. Who do I work with? What are my relationships? For whom do I owe time? There's a very social aspect of this. Those people have to sign off on my colleague letter of understanding. Because I'm imposing an obligation on them. Because they're going to make sure this machine is running when we need to have that. Okay? And if we have a problem, if they have a problem with something, I'm going to hey, wait, you agreed to, this is what I was going to, this is how I was going to spend my time. Basically, all the signatories are internal compatible suppliers. So in some ways, this feels, and I struggle a lot, like is some of this, we've talked about trust, right? Openness, tolerance is one of their prime values, and so that's clearly a gospel idea. But to me, and I got 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna skip over Whole Foods, just because it's very much the same thing. I want to think about this graph in the concepts, and this is pure speculation on my part. But I want to, like, if we think about in the firm, so not society, what are a lot of these, the management philosophy trying to do? I think it's trying to keep us out of off the egg. When we're in an organization, there's all sorts of externalities related to our disposition, our behavior, our actions. And by providing kind of the same mental model, the same values either through selection or through enculturation, we're getting people to realize that my actions affect others and affect others in a very negative way. And this is where I know we're almost out of time, I apologize. But to me, it's like there's 3 different ways that, if accurate, right? Because I don't want to counterfactual here. I'm not looking at some like, well, how do socialist firms work? I don't know that. But like if they do, if these are, if the success of these companies is because of the management philosophy, you're getting the greater productivity because you're staying out of that off diagonal within the firm, where individuals are making decisions that affect others. So you're reducing conflict. You're more spending time on things that are better for the common good within the firm. You're being more profitable because you are building up your people. It's a culture that because of both purpose and the self-actualization, people want to come work for and gain skills and human capital. And finally, you're being successful, because you embrace these principles of openness, commitment to markets, and all the things that come to it that are directly related to employee performance. Okay. I have 1 minute left. I know that was a lot. I'd be happy to talk more on lunch, because like what makes, but I say that I am, this is a very uncomfortable position for me. I mean that like sincerely. It has been a long time since I wrestled with something like, which is good. Because it has always been about like, I don't know. And I'm glad Bill asked me to talk about this, because I found reading about all three companies, and there's a way that those can lend themselves to hagiography, but there's clearly something there. I don't know, I felt the same way when I read Atlas Shrugged for the first time, right? Like, okay, some of this writing is a little wooden, but man, like, there's something that's bitten me. And I've done the same with me in reading. So thank you, Bill, for asking me to do this, and thank you all for listening.